You know, people often say our next guest is going to be someone who needs no introduction, but in this case, it's really true. Armistead Maupin, welcome to 10%. And our 100th show.
My honor to be here.
Oh, my honor to have you. You know, we were just talking about our...
We can't even pretend. We must not pretend that we're not old friends.
No, I know. I was going to say,
I'm
you
so
know...
happy to see you.
Thank you. I have to come clean. I remember when I first moved to San Francisco back in the 80s, and I was starting to write. Obviously did not become a writer, became a PR guy, and someone said, you need to call Armistead Maupin. And I had read Tales of the City and loved them, and I said, oh, well, he would never speak to anyone like me. He's like, just look him up in the phone book.
Oh, please, yeah.
And I looked you up and called you, and then you said, come down to a reading of Vito Russo's The Celluloid Closet.
I remember that.
On Valencia Street, and, well, the rest is a tale.
You were this sassy little Virginia boy in a Lacoste shirt. I thought you were hot as you could be. You still are, but of course.
I'm putting that on a sample. The saucy little boy in a Lacoste shirt.
And we were both giving Vito a little bit of hell about a certain actress friend of his who wasn't out of the closet
Miss Tomlin.
yet. Yeah.
Does that sort of stuff still bother you? I know it always did.
It still bugs me. Yeah, it bugs me more than ever now with, you know, we got all these It Gets Better campaigns, and yet famous people who are closeted and that everybody knows are closeted just put out the idea that there's still some shame there.
Well, yeah,
and we make excuses. Gay people make excuses for them. You see it all the time on the gay blogs saying, well, he's got a career. That's just it's the worst kind of internalized self-loathing, if you ask me.
So you still think there's that internalized sort of thing, you know, I can't come out because I don't feel like I'm...
Well, I don't think it. It's true. We all know there are plenty of gay people that they actually make it onto famous gay people lists now, though they've never exactly come out. So they're in a kind of strange position. But yeah, and the industry itself, I'm talking here, the entertainment industry, in this case, tells them not to do it. The gay agents and managers and producers say, don't come out. So privately, even though we've got GLAAD and all these organizations that are supposedly working they're not working on the closet.
Yeah.
They may be promoting whatever.
Well, they're selling stuff. I mean, whoever thought that being a Nelly swishy homosexual on a TV show would be selling stuff? I mean,
well,
evidence.
I'm happy about that because there are plenty Nelly swishy homosexuals out there, and they should. You know, for years we had them, and they never talked about it. We had Liberace and Paul Lynde, and nobody actually really said it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we have openly gay people, and we've got enough now. I mean, there's a wide spectrum, but the closet's not over by a long shot.
What do you think when you see a show like the A-List?
Well, I was revolted by that. I mean, first of all, I kind of invented the term.
I know. And it was meant to be derogatory, the A-gays and Tales of the City.
Yeah, I was making fun of a class of men who were sort of closeted, but they all, in San Francisco, they were sort of attached to the upper echelons of society, often as decorators, but not always. And they were very catty, often racist people. Who lived in this little bubble because they were an appendage of the rich. That's who the A-gays were.
Or sometimes even spouses of the rich.
And sometimes still even spouses of the rich. Yeah, so I meant that in a completely contemptuous way, and now I see people described that way as a good thing. I remember when the casting call went out for that show that you're talking about, and they said, Are you at the top social echelons of gay life? Do they pull the velvet rope aside for you? Is your partner older and richer? We want you. We need you, bitches.
Yeah.
We're doing a Real Housewives, but we're going to do it with gay men.
Yeah. Well,
and we want you all to be repulsive.
Right. I mean, this negative stereotype, and in a sense, it's like our issues are out there. But I mean, yes, I heard someone say to me recently, "Well, I know people like that on the A-List." I'm like, yeah, I know them too, but I don't think I'd make a TV show about them.
Well, they did, after all, answer an ad that asked them these questions about themselves, and they didn't flinch.
Right.
I think maybe what we're saying here is that people are more willing to be, they'll do anything. As Quentin Crisp said years ago, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you do it on the telly, and then all is forgiven.
Right. Well, now, I mean, besides being on the telly, I mean, Tales of the City, monster hit. I remember when the first Tales of the City was being filmed. Another confession, I was actually an extra in it. I was delighted to be next to Billy Campbell for about an hour while they filmed me going around the corner.
You were one of the A-gays.
I was one of the A-gays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to wear khakis, not a Lacoste shirt you keep talking about. And I had to, and I remember the producer said, lose the earring, because it wasn't, it was not 1970s.
Yeah, we were very, the tough part about that was shooting like the nude beach scenes, because everybody had tattoos where they shouldn't be showing.
Yeah, and you had to paint over them.
Yeah.
So you had the success on TV, and that became huge on First Channel 4 in Great Britain, and now there's a musical at American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. Did you ever think when you were there scribbling at the San Francisco Chronicle, doing journalism, as the sign says, outside?
Explain that.
I will, I'll let you explain it. That you would be this monster mega gay hit? I know it's a leading question, but what you're going to answer?
I mean, I know. I mean, I don't even know that I'm a monster mega gay hit, but I never thought that I would get to nurture this story for as long as I have. That to me is the real privilege of it, that I've been, that I, you know, was allowed to create this mythology, and that it became real enough in the minds of people that it could have these various incarnations. I'm not the most disciplined guy in the world. I'm not a
You're not someone who gets up. Yeah, you get up at 8 in the morning, and I once heard someone and tell me if this is wrong, correct me, but I once heard that you wrote some of Tales of the City between cocktails at a cabana at Rock Hudson's house. That you were actually writing pages. You may have told the story.
You may have added the cocktails in the cabana.
Oh, maybe, okay.
It was Rock Hudson's house. It was a place he had in Palm Desert, I guess. It was just a little suburban house with white gravel on the roof, like a lot of houses in Palm Springs. But he lent it to me and some friends because I needed to sit down and take all of the columns from the Chronicle and put them together. And my friends were all running around and having fun, and I remember being kind of pissed off.
And resentful.
I was there having to sit and type, and they were going out to the baths and having all the fun. But yes, as a matter of fact, since you brought his name up, I met Rock that spring before Tales of the City started.
Which was 76, 75, yeah.
It was actually 35 years ago yesterday, if I may place this in time.
Of course.
And he had invited a bunch of gay men, up to his suite at the Fairmont Hotel for drinks after dinner. We'd all gone out to dinner together. And I had bragged to him that I had this thing that I'd written that was going to be in the Chronicle the next day. And bless his heart, he went down to the desk clerk at the Fairmont and got what they used to call the Bulldog edition.
Yeah, the Bulldog edition, the early one.
The night before.
Right.
And stood up, somewhat drunkenly, and said, I have a little reading I'd like to do. And he read the first chapter of Tales of the City the night before it appeared in the newspaper.
I've never heard that story. That's amazing.
Well, and it's so bizarre because Mary Ann references him, or rather her mother does. She's on the phone to Mary Ann, who's saying, I'm not coming home to Cleveland, and her mother's saying, oh, no, darling, it's dangerous out there. Your father and I were watching Macmillan and Wife.
With Rock Hudson.
Yeah. Very. I don't know what was happening.
That's
in my
weird.
stars.
Well, I mean, and so in a real sense, the first live performance of Tales of the City
was by Rock Hudson.
Do you ever miss him?
Oh, all the time. He was a very sweet man. I can't really say I had great intimacy with him.
Do you think he had great intimacy with anybody?
I was told by his his extended family, the circle of people around him, George Nader and his partner, Mark Miller, that Rock considered me to be a close friend, and it sort of surprised me because I didn't feel that we didn't have I always felt like he was telling me what I wanted to hear, right down to the gay pride stuff, you know.
Yeah, but in a sense, you were living the life that he couldn't. He was Mr. Masculine Hollywood Idol, and you were there writing about the most out piece of literature ever to appear in an American newspaper.
Well, it sort of split us up, as a matter of fact, as friends. Not in any dramatic way. I just realized that I couldn't hide. I couldn't be discreet about that. I didn't want to be discreet about it. I was building my own life, and but anyway, yes, I think about him a lot. I thought about him recently when Elizabeth Taylor died, and how connected she was with him. Judy Kay, who was playing Mrs. Madrigal in
the ACT
in
production.
the ACD production of Tales of the City, was in On the 20th Century with Rock back in the 70s, right about the time that I met him. And she said just, you know, unreservedly, one of the kindest, nicest people I've ever known.
I remember you said something to me once that I have quoted several times to people about being out and coming out. And you said, if every gay person turned purple for a second, people in the world would be...
Hello.
would be astounded who we are.
Yeah.
And it was right around the time that Rock got AIDS, and you said, and a lot of people with AIDS are turning people purple. We couldn't avoid it anymore.
Yeah, oh, that's right. That was eerie, wasn't it?
Yeah. What is it like now seeing that whole story that goes from pre-AIDS San Francisco to post-AIDS San Francisco, if you can call it that, on stage?
The story of Tales of the City?
Yeah.
Well, Jeff Whitty, who's the librettist, has basically taken material from the first two books. So it's not post-AIDS. But it was a very wise thing to do because there are a lot of storylines that really do come to fruition in the second book. Michael's coming out to his parents. Anna's coming out about her trans nature. And so we needed, you know, he needed to make it feel rounded out. A serial, as I guess I've proven, can go on forever.
Forever, as long as people read it.
But a musical, you have to have a moment. And there's a great moment in the first book that's in the miniseries, that Christmas party.
Yes.
And he's just done a little weaving. It's not untrue to what happens to any of them. And I'm really, really happy with it. And he's written some funny stuff that I didn't write.
Yeah.
So we couldn't be lucky to have him, really.
We're going to be talking some more with Armistead Maupin after the break about Tales of the City and also some of his other work, including one of the darkest things he's ever written, The Night Listener. We'll be right back. We're back with Armistead Maupin, my friend, my guest for our 100th show, and the author, of course, this iconic book, Tales of the City. And then more tales and further tales and Michael book.
There's 8 of them now.
Yeah. The one book that I want to just talk on briefly, because you're right, we could do a whole show on it, was The Night Listener. How difficult was that for you to write, and have you ever, not regretted writing it, but wondered how did you get back to writing tales after writing something like that?
Well, it was about a mystery that was happening to me, and I basically wrote it to solve the mystery. And we could talk all night about it, but basically I was talking on the telephone to what I thought was a boy who was dying of AIDS. And then big questions arose as to whether or not that's who I was actually talking to.
And those questions still exist. I mean, the New Yorker
Not anymore.
Uh-huh.
The New Yorker, Tad Friend at the New Yorker did a big investigation, year-long. 2020 did something.
That's right.
The second 2020 show, they took a picture that the boy had sent me and put it on the air, and we found him. He was 28 years old today. They found him. And knew nothing about this tragic story he'd told about his life. And I knew when I wrote The Night Listener that there would be one person in the world that would know exactly what I was writing about. See, even in telling it, I feel it's weird. I have to be coy about it.
No, I understand, Armistead, and I just wanted to mention it because I think a lot of people have read that book. They saw the movie with Robin Williams, and they think, oh, that's not the same guy that wrote Tales of the City. And in a sense, now you've come back home to this because there was a time when, I don't know if you actually said it in print, but the indication certainly was, I'm done with Tales.
Well, you know, to be honest, when I left and when I did the last one in '89, Michael was HIV positive.
Yeah.
And I did not want to write one more gay tale in which the gay man died at the end. And that was part of my reasoning. I also felt I'd found a sort of full circle shape to the thing, and I was ready to stop. But as you know, I came back in 2007 with Michael Tolliver Lives. The title tells you everything.
Everything,
there. I wanted to celebrate the generation of gay men who have survived, who went through that horror, and are now in relatively, the domesticity has settled in, and real mortality, facing the notion of dying the ordinary way.
Yes. Well, you know, when you wrote Tales of the City, AIDS was around, but no one knew what it was. And then by the time we were into the third book, I guess it was in existence, I remember moving to San Francisco and having a really easy time finding an apartment because people were dying. And it was not a great time to meet people. I think a lot of people thought they weren't going to live through it. The thing,
no, it was a given.
Yeah.
It was a given that if you got AIDS, you died eventually.
And
that
now,
was it. And people who were HIV positive were heading there.
And they just knew they were going to die.
Yeah.
And now there's a generation of young people who are probably just discovering your books for the first time. Maybe we'll discover it in these characters, as you say, that are so dear, through the stage, the musical version. For them, AIDS is this, I don't know, kind of like drinking too much or something. It's bizarre. I'm always stunned when I hear about people wanting to have unsafe sex. And these are 19, 20, 21-year-old men. It makes me angry.
There's a wonderful documentary out, David Weissman's. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Amazing thing.
We were there.
We were here.
We were here.
That really covers that era so beautifully and the emotions around all of it. Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit in the green room. There's a lot of ways you can get harumphy as an old gay man, but I don't plan to do it. But I think, yeah, I mean, the young people who are working on Tales of the City, they're all under 40, are 14 times more savvy than we were at that age about who they are and where they're going. And
yeah, you're about the least harumphy person I would know. I remember when Facebook came out, my husband Alfredo said, "I don't think Armistead's going to like this." And I said, "He's going to love it." I
did. My husband's sorry he even turned me on to it. He said, "You really should get on there." But, because you've got, there's a musical coming out and you've got books to promote. But it's amazing. For writers, it's an incredible thing.
It's your column. It's your column in the new age.
I don't know that I'm putting that much deathless stuff down. Half the time it's about the dog or something. But the way you can connect with people who like what you do is extraordinary. In the old days, I answered fan mail. I didn't get massive amounts of it, but I'd get 4 or 5 a week, and I'd try to write people back because that's the way out of the loneliness when you're a writer. You sit there by yourself all the time.
I know you've had this occur to you because we've talked about it. People have come to you and said they use the letter home, Michael's letter home, I believe it was the first Tales where he comes out to his family.
It's in the second,
actually. Where they've used that as their way to come out to their family. Do you still hear those stories? We were talking to a young man in another show, and he was talking about coming out to his family, and he's 30, and how it sounded just as horrible and homophobic and hurtful as anything you described in Tales.
I think it's worse, because now there is a concerted effort against people being openly gay. The state of Tennessee just said teachers can't even use the word. So kids who grow up in these really fundamentalist environments have an active campaign of hate being directed to who they are, basically, by their parents, by preachers, by politicians. They hear it all around them. It's not like our little bubble here in San Francisco. Right. They all hear it. So in some ways, there was a great silence around it when I was growing up, and that was painful. And you heard, the occasional horrific reference to whatever, someone being imprisoned or declared insane, or my own father used to refer to men as being a very nice person, as a way of cluing that he knew who that person was.
Well, and your background, just to touch on it briefly, some people know, others don't, that your background was from a very old line Southern family, father in the military, you were in the Navy. You actually worked for kind of a bastion of the right. I believe he owned a radio station, Jesse Helms.
Yeah, I shook hands with Nixon before I headed off to San Francisco. I was set to.
You had all the right credentials. Yeah.
In more ways than one, I suppose. But I don't know if those are the right credentials for anything. Many of my family back home still, my brother is a conservative Republican and proud of it.
How do you get along with him now?
Well, he came to my wedding. He had to get a little drunk to do it, but he did come.
Well, yeah, so he came. But the other story is, what did he do? Did he say anything? What did he say to Christopher?
He's been very loving and support of both of us. I don't know how he divides it in his head. Well, I don't know how he works with a political party that tries to demonize gay people and still separates it in his head.
Do you think, though, when AIDS was first starting, it was real black and white. It was like Republicans bad, anti-gay, want to put a brand on all of us. Democrats, our savior. But, it was a Democratic president who signed DOMA, and we still have a president who doesn't quite know what to do with same-sex marriage. And then the most articulate defender of same-sex marriage is a Republican who helped make George Bush president.
Yeah.
Are they equally our friends or equally our enemies now?
Well, I don't
Republicans or
know.
Democrats?
First of all, I don't trust politicians. Period. I mean, the gay liberation movement's been going on for a long time now. How many? 40 years. And if it were that easy, if one side supported us wholeheartedly, it would be all over by now. But there's great care taken around all of it still, because there are people that.
And do you think it's all about religion?
I think it's changing. Well, religion certainly. It's a way in which politicians and preachers raise money. They get money. They used to scare people. They used to scare their.
Well, it wasn't the rapture was supposed to be our fault. Actually,
yeah.
a friend of mine.
I guess the failure of it is now our fault.
Well, exactly. Well, no, I mean, if it had been a gay party, it would have been late too. It would have been like, yeah, October. We'll come. No, I guess the preacher was going on the other day that yes, this was all because
that was the reason. Yeah.
That was the reason, and he said it's not because I'm homophobic. It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
And people believe this stuff.
Well, lots of in the Bible, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even climb into those arguments anymore. I don't understand. I mean, there's so much superstition that's revered, and that's not who I am. I am a humanist, atheist. Tried very hard. I was a little acolyte at Christ Church in Raleigh when I was growing up. Tried really hard, and nothing about it seemed rational to me, and I made up my mind that there must be other ways to be a good person than to believe in this particular fairy tale.
But you know what's interesting, and people have said this about your books too, all the characters are lovable at some point. Even, I mean, I think my favorite is the old conservative guy who goes down the river in the Russian River and ends up in the lesbian camp. I forget the character. Booter. They're all kind of lovable. You seem to like all your characters.
Well, it's a good thing I have had a few Republicans in my family.
You know how to write about them.
Well, that's sort of Edgar Halcyon, who the central love affair of Tales of the City, in the musical as well, is between Anna Madrigal, this transgender woman who's not out yet, and we don't identify him as a Republican, but he's a very conservative San Francisco businessman from an old family.
Right.
To me, that's where the fun comes from. When you say, never the twain shall meet, I think, oh, yes, they will. I'll make them meet in some way. That's funny you mentioned Buddhamanico, because that's my favorite scene in all of the tales, where he's stuck out in the wilderness and he's been rescued by this great salty old bull dyke.
A lesbian on the Russian River.
Yeah.
Here we are.
It's all over, isn't it?
It's all over after 30 minutes. I told you it'd whiz by. We've been speaking with Armistead Maupin, who I promised to have back if he'll come. I'm David Perry. This has been the 100th episode of 10%, and I want to wish today, on this very taping day, a happy birthday to the gay Gandalf himself, the first openly gay Knight of the Realm, Sir Ian McKellen. Happy birthday. We'll see you next week.